Brady, can you hear me?
Oh, yep, I can hear you. Sorry.
No, that's all right. Thank you.
Yep, I can hear you too. Oh, I'm sorry. That was just the
Hey, Brady, are you there? It's David.
Yep, I'm here.
Hey, I have a question. This Zoom meeting is different than what I'm used to. I am trying to locate the raise your hand. There's a hand thing at the top of my page, but I don't see an exclamation mark. And when I was banging on the hand at the top, Carl either didn't see it or didn't hear me or whatever last time. Am I missing something somewhere?
No, can you try to raise your hand again and I'll look and see if it comes up?
Okay, so right now I'm moving the cursor. That's the hand, and nothing happens with it. Now it's going back and launching live YouTube or something or other.
Oh.
Because at school it discolors and stuff. Hey, Grandpa, how are you? Hey, I'm getting onto a board meeting now. The great Brady IT Hess neighbor of ours from down the road is hooking me up here. And I spoke to your nurse. I know you have another.
Hey, Brady, while he's busy,
Yeah.
when I raised my hand last meeting, I see my hand come up on Missy's screen. I just tried to raise my hand and it came up on Dave's screen, at least on my phone.
I saw it come up on my screen as well.
All right.
I don't know if it actually comes up on your own screen or not.
Here, for instance, yeah, I know, but here, let me see.
How are you, Jake?
Disorder, I think. Last meeting when I was sitting there clicking my mic on and off, I was trying to raise my hand. Right now, I'm gonna hit my raise hand button.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I see it come up.
And it comes up under me?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Okay, here I go again. I just hit it twice there, Brady, and I get nothing.
Yeah, I didn't see yours go up. Jake, is your raised hand at the bottom?
Not at all. I do not have anything across the bottom. Now, right now, here, let me try this one.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah, but where am I getting that? Under participants?
Yeah.
I mean, I had to click under participants. It covers the page. And that is not like an individual icon across the bottom.
Are you using a computer or your phone?
I am using this Benton School District computer.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, Dave.
See,
oh, well,
Dave,
I know where you live. So just inform Carl that I'm going to interrupt him every 30 seconds but I will politely say, excuse me first.
Okay.
Now, Dave, where I'm at, on the bottom of the screen, you see mute, start video, share, participants, and more. And it's showing me you, myself, Jim Harcorn, and Brady.
Nope. I have no hand across the bottom
No.
until I hit.
You hit more, and it'll say raise hand.
Okay, now wait. Across the bottom, it says mute,
Go all the
start
way to the right.
video,
Yep, go all the way to the right to more.
participants, share screen, record, and leave. That is all I have across the bottom.
Well, yours is different than mine. Mine has a more thing where I can raise my hand. And then I click on it again to lower my hand. I apologize. I thought that would be of some help, but I guess not.
No, when I hit participants, that we're now at 8, it brings up 4 attendees, 4 panelists, and then it says raise hand. So at least I found it. But now I'm trying to find other things.
Well, I'm going to mute myself here until the meeting gets going and start the truck back up. It's getting cold in here.
to get beyond what my responsibilities are, so I don't actually know the day that the article will be given.
How do you think all this is going to unfold? The impeachment, he was impeached, the only president in American history.
Brady, this is Carl. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Carl.
I had a little trouble getting into Zoom. It decided it wanted to update itself as I was signing on.
This is Lance Wolf. Anybody else here?
This is George. Are you there?
I can,
Hi, George.
yeah, I hear you, Lance.
Okay, good.
It's nice to hear you, Lance. I hope you're doing well.
I am doing well, but on doctor's orders, I'm going to only participate in this meeting until about 7 o'clock. So if there's anything critical to be voted on, I hope it occurs before then.
Okay, I heard you, Lance.
Okay, good.
That must be your dogs, Lance.
Yeah, whenever I leave the room, I can expect about 5 minutes later I'll be yodeled to. Yeah, he'll quiet down now. He knows where I'm at.
Good enough.
Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the board members, I would ask if you're not speaking, please mute your mic because it does cause a feedback through the system.
Carl, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Mike, vote. It's either today or tomorrow. Can you give me a call? I touched base with Matt about our athletic director contract, and I'd like to talk to you about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Certainly.
don't know if tonight will work out, but can I call you tomorrow?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I don't know how long this is gonna be, so you can call me then.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll talk to you then.
Thank you.
Okay, Missy, are we about ready to start?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. I'd like to call the January 18th meeting of the Benton Area School Board of Directors to order. It's 6:30. We'll start with a roll call, Missy.
Mr. Knaus,
Here.
Miss DeYoung,
Here.
Mr. Griffith, Mr. Griffith,
Here.
Mr. Hess,
Here.
Mr. Lipinski,
Here,
Mr. Osborg,
Here.
Mr. Vogt,
Here.
Mr. Wolf,
Here.
Mr. Yoder.
Here.
Okay, we'll continue with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag
of the United
of the United
States of
States.
America,
to the republic.
to the
for which it stands,
republic which it stands, one nation,
one nation, under
indivisible,
God.
under God.
Liberty and justice.
Justice for all.
Liberty and justice for all. My system is cutting out here. Okay. Our mission statement. Our mission is to provide an excellent education in order to maximize the potential of all students and prepare them to meet the challenges of work and life in an ever-changing world. I would ask of the board and any of the participants again that so we can keep this meeting in order, that if you want to speak, wait until you're called upon by the board president to speak. You can raise your hand. For those of you that are on a computer, you should have an icon at the bottom of your screen that you can raise your hand, so I'll see that you want to say something. If you don't have that and you want to say something, just please say this is Jake or Dave, and I'd like to make a comment, and allow the conversation to finish, and then I'll call upon you. Okay. Continuing on, recognition of individual speakers and presentations. I do not have any that I'm aware of. The announcement, this Zoom meeting is being recorded, and we'll continue on with the approval of the minutes. I will need a motion and a second that the minutes of the following meetings be approved. November 16th, 2020, regular monthly Zoom meeting. December 2nd, 2020, reorganization Zoom meeting. January 11th, 2021, committee of the whole Zoom special meeting.
So moved.
This is Lance, second.
Okay.
Bruce.
We'll proceed on to a voice vote. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. All those opposed say no. Okay. It appears that the minutes are approved then. We'll move on then for an opportunity for visitors to address the agenda. Please note, keep your conversations down to 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address before you speak. And if I can see you to raise your hand, I will call on you one at a time from the audience that's listening. If not, please say, my name is such and such, and I wish to make a comment. And I will, after that, call upon you to make a comment. Okay. Changes to the agenda. We have a bus driver under personnel. And we will move on then to the business manager's report. Item number 1, treasurer's report. I'll need a motion and a second that the board summary report dated December 31st, 2020 be accepted and filed for audit. You have seen attachments sent to you on the computer.
So moved. Bruce.
Matt, second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion on the treasurer's report or any questions? Okay. Then we'll go to a roll call vote, Missy.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Ms. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborg,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
yes,
Mr. Yoder.
Yes.
Okay, item number 1 is approved. We'll move on to the approval of bills. I again will need a motion and a second to approve payment of the following bills. 11/17/2020 to 1/18/2021. Check numbers 87224 to 87396. And again, you've all seen attachments sent to your computer.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Griffith.
Okay. Do we have any questions on the bills?
This is Matt. I had a question. I was just curious, the first one, Erica, the generator. Did we get a new generator, or was that just maintenance? Or
Jim Harcourt may be able to give you more detail, but I believe that they're installing a new one and we're on a wait list, but it's it says generator in the comments, but it's actually multiple projects that he worked on for us. He did a kitchen project, a classroom project, so there's a couple things, but generator was the bulk of it.
okay, thank you.
Okay. I have a question. Further down on the list, there's a bill from Staples for $28,878. Can you give us a little insight on that one, Erica?
Yep, those are the tablets for multiple grade levels. I think they, in the end, I think they were the kindergarten, first and second grade new computers.
Okay. Does an item of that magnitude require bids and all? Did we do that?
They don't, because it's actually like the per unit cost. So per unit, we know we got a couple hundred of them. So per unit, they're only a couple $100. So it's just total that the bill is. I think that even includes cases and things too. So.
Okay. And I had one additional question. There's two bills processing for Reinhardt Transportation, one for 61,000 and another for 61,000. Exactly the same amount of dollars. Can you give us some idea as to what's going on with our transportation bills?
I can. At this point, we are just paying Reinhard what we paid last year and breaking it out into a monthly payment. The state just came out with guidance at the end of December about how he has to certify variable costs. So Glenn and I have to sit down. There's basically two options from this, whatever gained you your subsidy. Obviously for us, that would be last year, just based on the number of days the transportation is running. So we have to sit down and we'll probably reconcile it out at the end of the year, since we've just been still paying him every month, so that we're paying him something, because we don't want to leave him high and dry while there was no guidance.
He's not allowed
Okay.
to. We reimbursed him for fuel costs last year. Now that he doesn't have the fuel cost, well, he may have, I don't know.
Right. So that'll be in the variable cost. We just have to, it'll be like per day, per bus. We have to sit down and figure out what was different between what we would normally do in a normal year and what we've done this year. So there's costs that will come out of it still. But right now we've just been paying him a monthly payment until we could figure all that out.
Okay. Well, I understand what's going on, but I would like to have you review this with the finance committee at their next meeting, so they understand exactly how this is being done and, understand his contract and the payments and all.
Okay. Yep. We can absolutely go through that.
Hopefully by that time, you and Glenn and the state will have figured out what we should be doing.
Right. Yep.
Okay, good. Do we have any other questions on the bills? Okay. If not, we'll go to a roll call vote. Missy?
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes,
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborg,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Knaus.
Yes.
Okay, the bills are approved. We'll move on then to the superintendent's report. Mr. Gefton, you want to pick this up?
Sure, Carl. I guess I'd like to start out tonight by addressing some of the things that we've been doing over the last week and address some of the fallout from our last meeting. And maybe not some of it so much from the meeting as from the reporting and then the interpretation of that reporting afterwards. I did get some calls this week that were a little focused in on a concern that somehow the board and I were in some discord. I think that has to do with the press article last week that seemed to focus more on who had the authority to close school or continue in our model and do that. For those of you who attended the meeting, I think it was clear we weren't arguing over that, but it did seem like it came across that way, and I acknowledge that. I get if you read the article that that's what it seemed to be, some type of an issue. The reality is last week was not a voting meeting. The board always has the right to vote on a myriad of subjects. And what we were doing was trying to get an expression of the will of the board and a collective idea together based on our recommendations and then move forward. So I don't think for those in the meeting that this was an issue, but I do think that some people thought that perhaps there was some discord or some disconnect, and that it was some type of power struggle, that we weren't allowing a vote on something. We certainly always allow votes. I think this is a very transparent board, and what we were doing last week, and I think the comments I made was an attempt to direct that away from the necessity of a vote, which I still do believe is the legal avenue. Although if the board wants to vote on any type of model or thing, you always can. And I would never say that that's not the case. So I wanted to clear that part up. The other part that I think came out and I got some feedback on and I acknowledge that it was probably the way I made some remarks about the state's recommendations. I do stand behind the remarks I made. I do think the timing of their statements is not helpful for some things. And I don't think it really jives with the reality of COVID that we're still facing. However, I probably should have chosen my words a little differently. But I heard repeatedly this week from multiple people that the state has recommended that elementaries go back. That's the headline for sure. But the reality is there's a conditional part to that. The headline is state makes that recommendation for K-6, but then they also back it up with, if you can do that safely, if you're still following the guidelines, if you're still in an area where you can figure that out. They have never changed the other recommendations for our thresholds of cases, and they have never changed the recommendation for the amount of cases in a county, making it substantial. And again, I think I said it last week, the reality is Columbia County has been in a substantial risk category for now going on 2 months, I think. So I wanted to clarify that, and I do think there's a misconception because the headlines are state makes that recommendation, and I think what people are failing to see is perhaps what the rest of that story is. If you can do all those things safely, that's the conditional recommendation. Although I can see why people got that perception. If you watch the news, they said, the state makes a recommendation. Well, then it's a commercial break and 10 minutes later before they kind of gave you the rest of the story. So by then, I think people already had their mind made up that the state has decided this and blankly recommended it. And I do not believe that that is at all the case. So that said, I think the other part of it is I got some feedback that it seemed people thought that the board and the administration were ignoring the state. That is not the case. We're absolutely, in our meeting last week, addressed multiple concerns, talked about how we could change what we were doing while still respecting the safety parameters, but still open up some other opportunities for more kids to come back in and have some time in the school. We specifically talked about Title I and some of the needs of our special ed population. And then we also were following that directive or the will of the board coming out of that and reaching out to our teachers to make individual connections with parents and families and to see what the situations were and to see what we could do. In doing that, since last week, we realized very quickly, and I think this was something that maybe all of us last week, or maybe all board members didn't realize. When you talked about Title I, when we talked about Title I, I know that that's roughly a third of our elementary population. I kind of took for granted that other people knew the volume of kids we were talking about. So, I mean, we were instantly talking about 150 kids or so probably being targeted by our teachers through our programming as coming back into the school. On Tuesday, it was very clear as we worked through numbers, and Jill and her staff did a bunch of work, that we were having lopsided numbers in some of our classes. And so rather than have 10 kids coming in one class because they had met sort of those initial just Title I or special ed or teacher recommendations, we wanted to break that up. That's why we talked last week, and I sent some information out talking about going to 4 days a week back in. The teachers are already on that schedule anyway. Those 4 days back in, just to limit the number per class and sort of balance that out without having to reassign children to a new classroom, that we could just sort of, for lack of a better term, water down those classes a little bit, at least in their population, and therefore feel a little bit better about the safety and the spread, and keeping kids a little bit more apart without inviting a big population density back in. So that was the impetus for what we were doing. Again, I believe we were following what I felt was the express will of the board. When we started to reach out to families, there were a lot of questions about if, what the criteria would be, if teachers should be telling people no, they couldn't come. And realistically, while not maybe promoting coming back to school, I didn't want to put teachers, and I don't think anybody wanted to put teachers in a position where they were arguing with parents who had a very compelling reason, whatever it was. We heard a lot of things about mental health and well-being. We heard a lot of parents worried about the social emotional aspects of their child's development, especially some of the younger ones in first grade. And so that we took those things into account, and, the numbers are still changing daily. I want to say it's important that was not all the parents. We had a number of parents call or during their interaction with the teachers, just express that they did not feel it was safe, that they didn't want their child back, that they were okay with what was happening, and they wanted to keep remote. So I think there is a decent amount of, especially the elementary population, that is going to try to take advantage of a 2-day-a-week cycle. I think it'll be helpful. I think it does remain in the spirit of what we had talked about last week, and it's in line with the recommendation that we made. So I wanted to kind of go through that. And I just wanted to make sure that we were still all on the same page. Perhaps some of the potential numbers were unclear. I think they're kind of changing every day. Teachers continue to have an outreach. We are getting schedules together. The reality is we're probably looking at, 6-7 kids a class on the high end of numbers 2 days a week. I think we can do that very safely. I think we can do it efficiently. And I think those 2 days a week for those kids and families that want to come in, especially at the elementary level, are going to be beneficial. And I think they do address not only what the state was recommending, but it does it in a way that we can adhere to not just the headline, but the rest of their story about doing it safely and effectively. Had some great conversations with parents this week, concerns across the board. And like I said, they've run the spectrum from I want my child in school every day, all day, to I will never send my child back while COVID is going. So, the bulk are in between somewhere. And I think our solution coming out of last week sort of does the best to serve as many people as we can in a safe manner. So that's where we're at. I do apologize for the confusion amongst some of the board. We tried to communicate some things out. We had to clarify some statements. Again, I think things were done well-meaning. Some people put out some bulk emails. That's not what we really wanted to do. We wanted those personal connections with families. But in trying to offer some things out and doing what they felt was best for kids, some people put some things out, and I think it was well-meaning, but it maybe got a little off message. So that's where we're at right now. What we're still trying to do, and again, I hope this is what the board what the board's general will was and that we're continuing. You can certainly discuss it and change it and vote. I don't want to do that because I want to keep on track, obviously, but we are extending extra time and offering that out to people. This has been an outreach. The teachers have done a phenomenal job so far, trying to connect with parents, talk through potential needs, what the kids, what's best for them health and safety wise, as well as, you know, a lot of the social emotional stuff. I think we're finding that as much as the academics, quite frankly. And that's a very valid and important part of the process. So that's something that I don't know that we can address other than some in-house time with their peers. And I do think that the kids that are struggling maybe academically or not getting what they need, a couple days in-house will help sort of right the ship a little bit and get them back on track. It hasn't been that long out. It's really, I think, mostly this secondary closure after the holidays not coming back that seems to have been a little more taxing on some people and some kids. And I think we can move forward safely in this model, ostensibly remaining closed to a remote, but offering, you know, extra services, and then not doing a traditional hybrid necessarily, but, you know, for cause participation. And if families choose to participate, we can give them that time. And if they don't, we respect that decision as well. I don't see that being as open at the high school level. We probably won't have to have a lot in all 4 days, but certainly 2 days a week. There have been several kids identified and a lot of outreach there. Those teachers are continuing to do that this week. Scheduling is a little bit more difficult at the high school, as Jen could tell you, and any high school teacher could tell you. So there may be students that are only maybe struggling in one subject matter and they're doing fine somewhere else. So we're working through that a little differently, but it's still in the same spirit. And I hope, again, reflects what the will of the board was coming out of last week. So that's pretty much what I have. The only other thing I wanted to touch on, we were very fortunate, thankful to Geisinger and the CSIU. They worked on behalf of local districts. We benefited from being a small district, and we were able to send, I believe our final count was right around 50 faculty and staff members to get their first vaccine today. So I think that's going to go a long ways to getting our doors back open. We were rescheduled for second shot February 19th, I believe, whatever President's Day is, if that's the 19th. So a week after that, we'll have a good chunk of our population, or at least our faculty and staff population, vaccinated. And I think that'll go a long way to ease people's tensions, make them a little less fearful, and really do our part to stop the spread in our community by having a sort of a vaccinated buffer. We're looking forward to other opportunities for the rest of our faculty and staff, and hopefully it's going to open up to, you know, more layers of people, and then we're going to be able to keep promoting it. We did initially try to become a site of distribution. There are some real interesting complexities that we've learned about the vaccine that make that a tough thing to do outside of a hospital setting. So I don't know that, you know, we're going to be a Dodger Stadium anytime soon, but we're going to continue to try to work with the IU and Geisinger and their staff and resources to try to make it, you know, do our part and try to facilitate stuff as best we can. So I was glad we got to participate in that, and I'm happy so many people took advantage of it. And that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Carl, can I speak? This is Bruce.
Let me just get, just wanted to ask Mr. Gefton a question first. Before we go too much further, can you explain to the rest of the board what the criteria for remaining open is, closed? And if we do have to close, is it just a classroom or is it the whole school? For how long? What are we looking at as far as the steps?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. I kind of skipped over that. The criteria to be closed actually for Benton in a building is 3 cases. So just so everyone knows, we kind of hover around that on a daily basis. If we do close, that can be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7 days, depending on, you know, and it's generally per building. But the thing is with us, if it's certain people, go back and forth between both buildings on a regular basis. So depending on who one of the cases would be, it could shut down the district. Yeah, the threshold is only 3 for us. And right now we're kind of hovering around that threshold based on how far it's been since the last case was recorded. There's a real danger in coming back too many people that then people, we hear a lot of anecdotal stuff in the community too, or there's Facebook rumors about this person having it and that. Well, they're not in the school, but if their child would come in, or if, in the past, they may have spent more time around the school, that would have to be reported as a case the way and I'm not looking to play games to hide cases and say, well, this person was only here if they come in and they're there, they're there. And I think it's incumbent upon us to record all of those properly. So it only takes a few cases for that to happen for Benton. And depending on it, on who it is, where they are, it could be one building, both buildings. And, then you have to clean everything out, shut it down for several days. And we're trying to avoid that. But if it happens, we will shut down. We will honor the right thing to do and the recommendations.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, Bruce, you want to say something?
Yes. Forgive me if I forgot what Monday's meeting was, but I thought the bulk of the conversation is that we were going to outreach to the teachers who had a good understanding of what kids are struggling, and we would come up with a list of students and a number, and then we would then come back today and talk about what the outcome of that amount would be, with the total number of students it would be recommended to come back. On your January 13th at 4:48, you sent an email to the board stating, we will proceed to having the elementary teachers reach out to all of their students' guardians to offer them the opportunity to attend 2 days. I don't ever remember in last Monday's meeting that we was going to outreach as a bulk group and outreach to everyone. That I was under the understanding that the teachers would have past knowledge of a parent saying that an individual was struggling, and they would be identified. By the means of which a few teachers in this email was done, it took away the opportunity for this board to now step back because they've already been offered a particular day. Would you like Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever that is? I'm just disappointed in that, and that, we're at this point now to where we just offered everybody, and at some point, someone said, to be fair, we're going to be doing this, and we're at the worst part of the pandemic right now. And probably if we were in session, we'd be closed anyways. And now we just offered it to everyone, and the board has no say in that.
Well, I hear what you're saying, Bruce, and I think what happened is, and again, this was not an attempt to usurp the will of the board. That's really not kind of how I understood what happened Monday. I thought it was clear that we were going to be reaching out to every parent. That to me seemed like the only logical way. We weren't just going to be able to discern to find out all their concerns and talk to them, because not all the kids were academically struggling necessarily, but we heard from many parents, as administrators, I'm sure as board members, you've heard from people, and certainly the teachers have heard from parents about kids that were doing fine necessarily academically, but had some other real concerns, and they wanted them to be included. So the only way to discern that and really get to the bottom of what the needs of each child is, and to kind of try to serve everyone, I thought it was understood that the teachers would be instructed to reach out to all their parents. And in doing so, I get it. It opens up a floodgate, and the reasons can be across the board of why someone would or would not want to attend. But, you know, that was still something that I thought the most effective way to come to help out and to do what was best for the kids while still trying to not open up the school necessarily, was to let the teachers have that individual conversation with parents. You know, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Bruce, but that's not how I understood. I thought everyone understood, or that I was following the will of the board by instructing teachers to do that.
Does
And it
anybody else
wasn't
on the board
necessarily-
remember that conversation, as that we would be asking all elementary?
This is George. Can I speak?
Sure.
I don't have any concern with the way Mr. Gefkin put out the emails. I read them thoroughly. And I believe through our conversation last week, the only way that we could determine who needs to come in for additional help was to contact everybody. And it's like Mr. Gefkin said, it's not necessarily kids that are doing okay academically are doing well emotionally and otherwise. So I took it as the only way we could determine the number of people that really did need to come in and take advantage of this extra opportunity was to contact everybody. I don't know how you could do it any other way. You know, like he said, they could be doing okay academically, which means they're completing their assignments every day, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their emotional stability is in a good place. So I think what was done is in pretty much agreement with what we thought, and I don't have a problem with it at this time. If Mr. Gefkin says they can bring that many kids in and they can do it safely, then I think that's what we should do. And we always have the opportunity to shut down if we need to. Most of the cases in Columbia County are continuing to go down. The cases in the Benton district are not that much. If you look at the total population in the Benton district versus the number of cases to date, it's not very a high percentage of cases when you look at it at our district only. So for me, I'm okay with what Mr. Gefkin is doing. I think it's a compromise, and I think it's probably the best solution at this time for our kids, for our parents, and also for our staff and our teachers. That's all.
Carl, if I may.
Dave Lipinski, I see you had your hand up, so go ahead.
Thank you, Carl. I also was in the same meeting that Bruce Hess was in. I think we need to be very careful. I was unaware that our teachers are actually certified psychologists and have the ability to determine special needs in an emotional standpoint. I understand, and I truly, truly understand that we have students that are having problems at home. The only issue here ends up being is a safety matter. We were inviting kids, or we were polling those teachers when they looked at their grades, which is a subjective type of, you actually know, is the kid gone up, gone down, or stayed the same? That's what I thought we were polling. I also have a concern because Dr. Gefkin mentioned that we are now going to be opening up or considering secondary students on an individualized basis. I could say I do realize and believe that was not part of our conversation last Monday. It would also be going against the will and the recommendations of the state concurrently. And to George, please forgive me. Substantial is based on a county-wide basis. We are not able to say over here it's good, but over there it's bad. Our county is still in a substantial situation, which therefore means it's a no-go. I think the cat is out of the bag. Where we lost that, I am a little disappointed also, but I do think we need to move forward as safely as possible. And with that safety concern, I still think there are things in our plan that we need to discuss at the current time. Thank you, Carl.
Hey, do we have any more board comments? I don't see anybody's hand up. Okay. Any more questions or concerns about Mr. Gefton's report?
Earl, this is Jake. Could I speak?
You may.
I think I'm kind of on the same page here as Bruce and Dave. I believe that we were going to speak with the teachers and that they already kind of had a handle as to how many students they thought were struggling desperately and needed to try to be included in what we were going to try to expand. I kind of felt from the conversation we had last week that the administration had discussed this thoroughly with the teachers already before we were informed about it, and that they were kind of together knowing that, you know, such and such student and such student, and that they just needed a week to kind of speak with parents and get things together. I'm kind of concerned if we do this in a 4-day schedule, which I can understand the need, depending on the amount of students, that there isn't any time like for cleaning in between. Previously, we talked about like an A/B schedule when we go back full time and all this, and a Monday, Tuesday, and a Thursday, Friday schedule with Wednesday being in between for cleaning. Where if we're doing a Monday through Thursday schedule, now certain students are going to be there Monday and Wednesday, and then certain students will be there Tuesday and Thursday, I believe, if I follow this correctly. And in between, I mean, I know our custodial staff does an excellent job trying to do their best to clean the school, but wouldn't possibly be best to have that Wednesday in between to break things up and offer a better chance for some more cleaning if we have to go that route?
I mean, yeah, Mr. Knaus, I can address that. I think the reasoning for the Monday to Thursday scheduler idea was that since we already had kids Monday, Wednesday, we wouldn't be disrupting the schedules of some of those, mostly special ed students, but there were students with internet issues and other stuff that had already been coming in. I think the major influx that you're going to see is the Title I kids that I thought was clear, maybe not the volume of Title I kids that we have identified, but that still remains the bulk of the kids that would be participating back in. I don't know yet, based on all the surveys, how many students are in each class. We haven't had that recommendation or that final tally from our teachers. I do think, though, that the bulk of the students who would be returning are ones that we would have already expected, or the teachers would have identified. I don't want to get too far off on the idea that most of the kids coming back are just coming because their parents think they need some time with their peers. That is a very small amount. I think the majority would be identified by the teachers, and that outreach was focused on those parents and families first, probably. And the reasoning being that, quite frankly, and I know I said it, their kids doing okay because they're doing their work, or George made the point, but they're not doing well otherwise. I think what we're seeing is that doesn't stand alone very often, that if they are having struggles outside of the academics, it starts to reflect in their academics, and the teachers are seeing that and recognizing it. So I do think that the bulk are still being identified by the teachers, and that was the idea. But as you start to have those conversations and you call the parents of those, the parents talk, and everybody, we're in a small community, and people want to know why this kid gets to go back and that one doesn't, and why they haven't had a say, and why, nobody's asking them about their child. And so that was why I felt it was important that they talk to all the parents. Again, I thought that would have been understood, that, all parents would have been called as part of this process. Some of it just to touch base, and some of it, that's all it amounts to. They just touch base, and the people, parents don't want their child sent back. And again, but not to digress off the cleaning thing, that was the reason for the Monday, Thursday schedule, to keep consistent with the Monday, Wednesday that was already there, and then the Tuesday, Thursday on top. I see there are places do that Wednesday sort of deep cleaning. I do think that our custodians do a real nice job. They clean thoroughly every day. And I think that having such reduced volume of traffic, down to, a third, a half, or even if it's a little more than that in our school in a day, it could never be more than half of the traditional population. So I think that'll go a long ways to making it easier on the custodians to do a good job. And I also think Jim has bought some equipment, some foggers and some things that have speeded up the process, which allow us to do it safely. I mean, I do understand why people do it. But I also think we can do that, some of those extra things maybe on a Friday. I wouldn't even say they're extra, because I'm telling you, they do it every day. That the custodial staff really does a nice job every day.
All right. Well, I just had one more quick thing, if we could touch on it real quick. I'd just like you to clarify, when you say we get 3 cases or more and we're closed, I'd like you to clarify to everybody listening, that means the district is closed. That's not virtual. That's not anything. That's closed, if I understand that correctly. And if so, how is that going to affect our students in the long run for the rest of the school year?
Well, what you can switch to virtual during that time. So you don't have to close completely, and not, as long as you don't have people who are able to teach remotely. That's what the model has been throughout our area. Several districts have gone in and out and in and out. They're switching to virtual, essentially. We're not forced to close our doors and not do anything. We just can't have anybody physically in our buildings, other than maintenance and custodial crews cleaning and sanitizing. And then there are days of buffers that are built in, and the state has them out in the guidelines. But for us, generally, it's 3 people. If 3 people in a building, that building would be closed. And that could be district wide for us. But yeah, I'm probably, by saying we're closed, I should be saying we're forced out to 100% virtual, no kids and no staff in the buildings. So right now, the staff are in the buildings, faculty and staff are in the buildings, and kids are coming, at a very limited level in the elementary 2 days a week. And what we're really looking at is expanding that. And again, I apologize if this was, we were unclear, but the message that I took coming out of last weekend, and then building on the feedback as the connections with families from that started to grow, I thought that this is what was in keeping with what the will of the board was. I certainly didn't mean to, sort of let the flood waters loose, or, but I think in a way that did happen, and that was not the intention. I will go back to saying, though, again, that I believe that the bulk of the kids who have been identified so far coming back are ones that the teachers identified or recognized in some way, shape, or form. But in the spirit of fairness, in connecting with these other families, and families knowing that we were doing this outreach, there are people who, want their child back in school for whatever reason. And the majority reason we're hearing is the social emotional type stuff. And it's important. And I don't want the teachers to try to invalidate that. As Dave said, they don't have degrees in psychology. They're not trying to determine that these kids have a problem, but they're certainly not qualified to tell a parent that, well, no, what you're saying isn't true. And so it does sort of open the floodgates up. And I don't want I would not want a teacher to be in a situation where they told a parent that, no, your child's fine, they should stay at home, and we can't allow them to participate in something. And then God forbid that child, has further problems, So, that kind of goes both ways, and not being sort of super qualified to understand that. But again, the bulk of this, I believe, and I think the numbers will pan out. These are mostly students that teachers would have identified or have identified anyway. And, but I think we can do it this way. I think we can do it safely. It was not the intention of myself or the administration to undermine the board's will or authority. I thought we were executing it. But I do see now there's some misunderstanding. And I apologize for that. If it's anyone's fault, it's mine.
All right, thank you.
Dave, I see you still have your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yes, I'd like a little bit of clarification. I would like to tell, in speaking to Mr. Gefkin, he used the term fairness. There is truly nothing fair about this disease. And you do not know where it's going to hit next. So when we're talking about fairness, we were trying to keep as many people in our community safe as possible. And that is what my takeaway from the last Monday's meeting really was. We were trying to identify the students that had that educational need. That is what we are here for, is to educate. I understand the rest. I get it. But right now, if we have people that are, become very ill or are totally compromised on the word of fairness, we have to live with that. I would also like to add to, the overall concept. I walked the buildings today, and I think things are pretty good, and we're doing very well. And I appreciate what Jim is doing with the staff, but we have to also look where our COVID numbers were, and where we lose a couple people, we could have some serious problems with keeping the buildings clean. My issue with the schedule, the way it is currently set up, we have 5 days in a week. That means there could be a built-in cleaning day, a deep cleaning day on Wednesday. I also think the way our schedule is set up, heaven forbid, we may have an issue with contact tracing as far as how many people are in and out of the rooms in such a short amount of time, and heaven forbid if there is a desk missed. But I would also at this time presently like to clearly understand what our board's direction is with secondary. My understanding is secondary is middle school included, which is 7, 8, 9. Dr. Gefkin, earlier you hinted at bringing in certain 7th and 8th graders, and as per our meeting last week, that was not on the agenda that I felt we set forth. And I want to make sure what your standing is on 7th and 8th graders. If we are putting secondary students back in a building that aren't identified truly special needs students that have other criterion that they would be in the building. I want to know right now what your intentions are when you say 7th and 8th grade students, which I consider secondary, which they are on the no-go list according to our state.
Hey, Dave, can we postpone this until later on in the meeting? I'm sure one of my walk-in motions is going to cover this.
I will understand that, but I do not want to walk out of this meeting without a clear understanding of what our board's intentions are, and Dr. Gefkin's intentions when he uses or speaks of the 7th and 8th graders.
It'll definitely come out later.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Gaffney, would you care to clarify your position on the 7th and 8th graders?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm fine actually. If the board doesn't want the secondary and we want to remain carved out. I can see through this conversation that perhaps we were going a little too far there. I think, again, we were doing it in the spirit of trying to address the needs of the community and talking to teachers. And some of that probably got extended from the elementary talks into some of the high school, where some teachers felt that they could hopefully recommend some time for some of those kids. 7th and 8th is it's tough because they're 12 and 13. That's why it's tough. And some of those kids we see academically, if we were going to target two areas, quite frankly, looking at the data, it would be kindergarten and first, and it would be 7th and 8th. But again, that's not how it was discussed before. I think I may have mentioned that last week, but we can walk that back if that's an overreach and the board doesn't want to include some of those kids. I do think that we can do that safely, and we can bring and we're talking a very small population in 2 days a week. Now, there are some special ed kids that we have been servicing and that we do have to address. Title I doesn't go into junior high, so there's no one identified that way like they would have been in the elementary. I just think it was an extension of sort of the generality. But I do see your point, Dave, that was not included. And I don't think we probably discussed that in a way that would have indicated that that's maybe what we should do. There have been a lot of wheels in motion over this last week, and that probably just got caught up in it. I know Jen had some very strong feelings about it and how to try to do some outreach. I think we have a lot of teachers who really want to make some of those connections with those kids and figure out a way that they could do it safely. And that was, I guess, in the spirit of it, but that I would agree does not maybe accurately reflect what the understanding of the board would have been last week. So if the board wants to walk that back, you want me to walk that back, I can certainly do that. I understand it. But again, I think the idea was still trying to keep everyone safe. I haven't backed off the safety protocol, Dave. I mean, I'm probably getting beat up more for being that guy in the local region than anything else. So I'm not coming off my high horse or whatever about safety and about, my tornado analogy. I stick by what I said. I don't think it's the right time necessarily, but I do want to be respectful of not only what the board said, but the public outcry too. I'm not trying to make it doing the easier thing. The easy thing isn't the right thing, but I think a lot of parents made some very valid points. And again, I'm going to go back to that. We're not psychologists, but we do recognize that school isn't just about academics. School is a holistic experience, and the social emotional development of children as they participate in school. I don't know if there's a substitute for that. I don't even know that bringing kids in 2 days a week in the smaller groups fully addresses the complexities of that. But I think it helps them at the younger age. I think there's a valid argument for the 7th and 8th grade participation, but we certainly don't have to do it. And that is not what the state recommended. So,
Dr. Giff,
There will
please forgive me for interrupting. I know you're using the term, the spirit of the community, and I am truly concerned about the safety of the community and the safety of our students and the safety of our teachers.
Yeah.
That term safety plays in there well. I think those are kids that we really need to figure out other ways to outreach to and get on Google Classroom and get some things done there that are maybe above and beyond, that A&E program or whatever it is that we are on. But at the same time, in the same sense, we have said we are following state guidelines.
Right.
And we are following state guidelines in many situations where we are getting beat up on and people don't understand what those state guidelines are. Junior high.
Dave, I'm absolutely fine with it. And please understand too, that in addition to the ideas and this rolling out, a big focus, especially at the secondary level, has been revamping the time and some of the structure and what we're doing on those outreach. So that is part of what's already taken place. I don't have a problem with saying that, there was a lot of well-intention here, but we can't bring 7th, through 12th in. Other than the special circumstances for special education and a few things that we're obligated to do. I'm fine with reining that back in if that's what the board wants. I understand that. You're making a very valid point, Dave, and I don't want to be a hypocrite and get caught up in more of a reopening and be blind to the safety agenda that I've been championing and pushing. And if that's what's happening here with that, I can see that, and I'm happy to walk that back.
I respect the manner in which you're trying to do things for the positiveness of our students. But at the same time, that was something that I believe truly we discussed last week. And now I'm hearing it in situations and in emails that I'm frankly trying to keep track of what we have going on back and forth as far as emails. So I just want that out to be clear with the public in general. We have been following state guidelines extremely well. And in the spirit of things, I want to continue to do that because they are the people that are evidently in charge. And if the public as a whole is upset with that, I think they need to look towards the state more than, what we are trying to do to save our people here tonight.
Well, and if I can just touch on that for a second, I think there is a misconception in the public that all the other schools around are open and doing this successfully. And again, that's not the case. They may be open, the model may be a little bit different, but they're either in a hybrid plan or they're in and out. There have been several closures over the past few weeks throughout our region, whether they were for a few days or a week or one building or multiple buildings. And that's a very disruptive pattern. And I think it shows that that's for cause. It's because there's COVID in your building and you have to do it. So I think that there's another kind of narrative out there that we are the ones bucking the trend and not doing what the state recommendations are. And quite frankly, I would argue that we have adhered to them more truly than, some of our neighbors. I don't want to bust on them. It's not that they're different choices. We're different communities. And, but everybody isn't just open all the time and it's all fine. They have cases and they close and then they reopen and then they have cases and they close. That's what they've chosen to do. And I'm not trying to make a judgment call whether that's right or wrong. We haven't closed for COVID cases, but to be fair, we've been only open in a very limited capacity. And I do recognize that expanding that in any way does up our risk of having to close and be in the same cycle that our neighbors are in.
Well, like I said, I have a walk-in motion that'll definitely give the administration guidance on what the board's views are going to be. So like I said, we'll have more discussion on this topic coming up when we get into the Carl's actions.
Okay.
And it does address what James says with students, so it hits both sides.
Carl, this is Jill. Can I speak?
You may, Jill. Go ahead.
I just want to as curriculum director of the school district, I would just like to say something. I want to just clarify a couple really important things that I think will help with this conversation. At the last board meeting, there was conversation about whether or not we should bring kids back or not, and what was the best fashion to do that in. Based upon that meeting, what I heard from that meeting was to go back and look at our situations and try and figure out what we should do as an administrative team to meet our kids' needs. With that said, when I did that, I went back to the elementary school building and I looked at our elementary numbers with what kids are coming into the building, who chose to come in and who have chose to stay home, and what our Title I numbers are, what our special education numbers are, and what kids need to come in based upon the lack of progress that they have made since they've been out. After I went through all those numbers and sat at my desk and did all that, I walked over to Mr. Gefkin's office and I said to him, James, this is the situation that we're in. Based on the numbers that we have in this building, the small community that we have, and where we're at, the only fair way to do this is to reach out to our families and say, is your child okay? How are they doing? What do they need? And do you want to come into school 2 days a week? After him and I talked through that at the elementary level, K to 6, we felt that it was best to be fair across the board. And I heard you say about fair. You're correct, Dave. Nothing about this is fair. I know everybody wants to be back in school. So do we. So do the teachers. So do the administrative team. But you can't have it not be fair to all families. And when I say that, just because one family was at the board meeting and heard what was going on, called and said, I want my kid to come back because this is the need that they have, you have to afford that to everyone. So if the board is upset about that decision, or that's on me. I told my teachers to have that conversation with their families. I did not specifically say you have to do it through an email, you have to do it through a phone call. I trust them. They know how to talk to their parents. They know the form of communication that they use to talk to their parents. So that's what we did. And I stand behind what we did. It wasn't at all to not do what the board directed us to do. I feel like you guys hired me to do that, to say, this is the recommendation. This is what we need. This is what you guys wanted from us, was to look at these things. From the 7 through 12 level, as the curriculum director, I sat down with Jen and Lindsay and James, and we sat down and talked about what is the best thing and what should we do for our 7 through 12 kids. And when we talked about that, we talked about, because of them being of an older age, maybe it isn't best to bring them back 2 days a week. But we do have kids that aren't doing what they need to be doing, who are struggling. We don't know. We are not psychologists. We don't know if it's from a social emotional standpoint or if it's from an academic standpoint. But what we do know is they're not completing work. So what Jen did was she looked through the numbers of cases of kids that aren't doing their work and need to be back in the school, and the special education population, and those numbers are fairly low. They're not large. So there was no offered out to all kids 7 through 12. I just felt like it was really important that I said that at this point in time, because I don't want it to be that the administrative team wasn't doing what the board requested. It's just when you're in such a small area, you offer it out to a Title I kid, and the parent says back to you, well, that Title I child helps my kindergarten kid, so I'm not going to send them in. It's very, very important that we had to offer it to the sibling then, because that kid needs it. The class size is very small. I believe that James said 7. I can tell you that the maximum number that have invited in on one day is 10. We do not know if that's confirmed that all 10 are coming. I can tell you that my teachers reached out, and there are plenty of classrooms where the family said, no, we don't want to come back in. So I don't think that there's going to be those large numbers of kids at one time. And I think that we are doing the right thing based upon the situation and the hand that we've been dealt. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joe, for your comments. If we have no other discussion, we'll move on then in the agenda. Okay, we'll go on then to the middle senior high school principal's report. Again, you should have a report on your computer. If you have any questions, or Jen, you want to add something to it?
Sure. To follow up with Mr. Gefkin and for what Ms. Shupp said, is that in the 7 to 12 level, we will approximately have 40 to 50 kids tops coming in, and that includes our special education students that have already been coming in. So we've identified through our teachers and our team leaders, they've worked over the last week and a half to look at students' grades from the first and second marking period, and we've had our counselors reaching out, and we've reached out to families that from a grade standpoint would be in danger of failing or repeating courses. And so obviously no one wants that. And so at this point, we are just looking at the kids with our greatest needs and keeping the numbers low. So, we've reached out to parents today to see if kids can come in Monday, Wednesday. And again, I wouldn't anticipate more than 50 kids in the building in a day. I highly doubt that. And that would be mostly on Monday and Wednesday. The other thing I've done is the teachers are working on offering more live teaching. They will be offering those sessions during their class periods, geared definitely towards Tuesdays and Thursdays, because there will be a student or two in their classroom on Mondays and Wednesdays that they're going to work to catch up and bring back up to speed, because they have gaps in their learning. So, we're doing our best to meet our kids' needs and, work together as a team and do what we can. We know it's a tough time. You know, we do the best that we can. The other thing I want to do is I just wanted to point out that our school nurses have been doing a great job. Holly Upton, Brooke Karcher, and Krista Weaver. Krista Weaver has worked night and day, especially with Matt Eaton and our athletic director, and Laura Campbell, our athletic trainer, work together with the athletics and our teachers and our students through contact tracing and reaching out and communicating what we know, and reaching out to the Department of Health. So I just want to thank them for the work that they've done in keeping our school safe. And I think that we've done a great job as a whole with that. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that if you go to the school district website, there's a link there to the Benton YouTube channel, which is where our home athletic events will be broadcast. And Megan Ayton has worked with students to get those games live streamed so that families can watch them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jen. Any other comments for Jen? If not, we'll move on to the elementary school principal's report. Jill?
Hi, yes. So based upon what I just said, the plan at the elementary school is to bring back kids 2 days a week that want to come back, who have needs to come back. With that said, I don't know our specific numbers as of right now. Before we left, we had about 300 kids in our building. Again, I can't give you those specific numbers because we're still waiting to hear back from families to know what that looks like. At this point, the maximum class size I have right now has 10 invited. Not saying those 10 are confirmed. Our maximum class size is 18 kids. So, at the most, it just depends with siblings and stuff, because what we're trying to do for families is to make sure that siblings are attending on this day. So it makes it easier on families. Our teachers are working really, really hard. I echo everything Jen said about the nursing staff. We wouldn't be able to do this without them. As far as teaching and what our teachers are doing, when we were out, we decided before we started this whole year that we were going to use accelerated education, and we are using accelerated education K through 6. We have supplemented it with different supplemental materials in Google Classroom, and we will continue to do that, and we continue to get better at that. There are some staff that are better at it than others. We continue to meet in team meetings to make sure we're meeting parents' needs. And I would just like to say, I've only personally heard from 6 parents who've personally called me. So if there are issues and there are concerns, I do ask that you reach out to your teachers. And if they're not getting back to you, then please reach out to me. But I can't fix something if I don't know what's wrong. So if there's something wrong, I don't think airing it out at a board meeting is the best way to do that. I think you need to call the buildings and you need to have conversations with the administrative team. Like I said, the teachers first, and if that's not satisfied to what you want or need, then obviously it's my job to make sure that our students and our families have what they need, and that's what I'm here to do. That's all I have, unless anyone has questions for me.
Okay, well put. Thank you, Jill. Any other comments for Jill? All right, then we'll move on to the special education director's report. Lindsay, you're on.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my special education teachers have been responsible for contacting the parents of students on their caseload to discuss scheduling options throughout the continued virtual instruction period. And through having these conversations with parents, the feedback from them has been very well received, and they've been very receptive to having the additional offering of in-person instruction on a more consistent basis. And after reviewing the special education class list today, district-wide of responses so far, most of the students have been scheduled to attend 2 days a week, and we have about 15 to 20 students who are scheduled to attend 4 days a week at this time. So I just want to express that I feel that as far as my department is concerned, this is indefinitely the best decision for our special education students at this time, given that we're choosing to extend the virtual instruction period. And that is my report for tonight.
Okay. Any other comments for Lindsay? Then we'll move on to the technology director's report. Mr. Brady, you're up.
Okay, in the last couple of weeks, we have installed some new cameras in the district, replaced several network switches that were getting, fairly old, and we were able to purchase those through E-rate funds, and started also getting prices on replacing the middle school and high school laptops for next school year.
Okay. Is that it then?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. Any board questions for Mr. Brady? Okay. Move on to the Director of Maintenance, Buildings and Grounds report. Jim?
Yeah, Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so just since the last meeting, Matt Leidecker from Orangeville Surveying Consultants started to survey the lands for the borough consisting of the baseball field, the tennis courts, and the grandstands. He's starting to prepare an add-on subdivision which will be transferred over to the Benton School District, and he started to research the existing property lines. He did get the final pin set on the corners to create the new parcel of property. We did find an issue with some of the setback distances. They have to be, I think, greater than 30 feet. So Mr. Gefkin and I had to apply for a variance to the borough with Matt Good to move on with the purchase of this property. They have a meeting coming up soon, so we'll have that information and application back soon, hopefully. The other thing was there is some grant funding coming available here, possibly in March. So I have Siemens here looking into evaluating our HVAC equipment and looking to getting us a quote to add ionization solution to our HVAC systems. It would be installed to the current UV units, our air handlers, our ceiling mounted units, and our ductwork. What this would do is it would attack the virus and pathogen and bacteria that are in the air by positively and negatively sending ions through the ductwork. So this approach would actually help provide cleaner air to our staff and students. And I think they're going to be here at the end of this week to help kind of wrap up the quote on that. I think the only other thing was last month we had all that snow and rain. We had to replace some of the elementary sump pumps due to the high water table. We put in 2 pumps that are going to be a little more durable, be able to handle the run time that the other pumps didn't have. And I think that's all I have for tonight.
Okay. When you keep talking about the work we may do on the heating, air conditioning, and air quality system, that's a perfect topic for our new round of COVID funds that we'll be receiving. So I think you need to get together with the Buildings and Grounds Committee with Dave and come up with some recommendations.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And I had one other comment to make. Have you been able to get the new truck that we use to deliver the food re-stenciled with a Benton logo?
I was in contact with DeFebo Graphics, and that was right about when I came down with COVID. So I kind of got sidetracked for 2 weeks. So I'll reach out and get back on that.
Okay. All right. I noticed that again the other day. Dave, you had something you wanted to add? I see your hand is raised.
I'm just curious, Jim, would it make sense that when it seems that our water table rises at very inopportune times, would it make sense to have one of those the pumps that you needed to replace? Is it a consistent pump if we got one to put on a shelf somewhere just to have?
Yeah.
In
So
cases of emergency?
in the elementary basement, there is 3 sumps just for normal groundwater. We did do the work on the front of the building to get the groundwater to run towards the street, but we did purchase 2 large sump pumps, gas-powered ones to handle flooding. So if for some reason we did have water in the elementary high school basement, we could pump out large volumes of water.
Jim, would it make sense for us to put gutters on the front of the elementary school building or in certain areas?
We do have most of the areas covered with gutters, and
I know we did such a beautiful job with that front lawn in the front of the elementary school, but the water is running off the front of that and beating up that area one more time. Something possibly to look into in the future, possibly, because it's going to do the same thing with the way that's set up. And I'm very sorry. So you're saying right now we don't need another pump, or it wouldn't help to have a spare?
no, I actually have 2 spares in the bio plant that will pump large volumes of water.
Okay.
Purchased those after the 2018 flood.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Dave, these are all good items. I think you need to schedule a buildings and grounds meeting with Jim and his staff to get some better ideas too.
Will do.
Okay. Moving on then to the administrative action. What I'd like to do with the items that we talked about last week, I would like to block vote on those items. If there's anything new that's added to the agenda or something that needs to be added to the agenda, we'll discuss that separately. But starting on with administrative action, I will need a motion and a second to approve the following school booster club fundraiser. And again, this was the cheerleading one with the chocolate bars.
So move.
Second.
Okay. If there's no further discussion on that, we'll go to a roll call vote. Missy?
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Osborne, Mr.
Yes.
That's just wrong.
That's a yes for Mr. Vote.
Mr. Wolf, Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Knaus.
Yes.
Okay. Motion number 1 is passed. Moving on to the
Did
athletic
I not
committee.
get asked?
Wait a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
Carl, wasn't this where I was gonna do my motions or not?
You may at this point in time, yes.
Okay. So the topic of a lot of this is board direction. And I came up with 5 walk-in motions that I would like the board to discuss and vote up or down to settle some of this turmoil that we have, and that it's not, so it's a clear direction of where we are going and where the board would like the administration to go. Item number 1, I'd like to make a motion that no more than 6 students will be assigned to any educational classroom. If more students would like to come back, that this will prevent the maintaining of the class size of 6 students. The remaining classes for that grade level will be balanced out. One class cannot have more, or no one class can have more than 1 extra student assigned to the class while in the reduced learning model. The school board needs to be notified of increased class sizes if it exceeds more than 6 students. This notification will list the class sizes, all the classes in that grade level. The reason, okay, that was my, so can I get a second on that?
I'll second that.
The reason being that I am proposing this one is that if we have a unbalanced load and have 10 students in one class and the same grade level has 2 students in one class, and someone gets sick in the group of 10, they're gonna go, liability wise, why is there 10 in this one and 2 in that one? I think it's a liability issue. Any other discussion?
I mean, I could weigh in on that briefly if you want. I think the only thing you're missing there in that idea, Bruce, and I understand the spirit of it, but we do want to keep kids with the teacher that, especially the elementary level, that they were assigned to and spent time with at the beginning of the year. What that would effectively do for any 1 over 6 is you're assigning them to a different teacher. Well, that's not the end of the world or anything. I think then you're going to get into an argument with parents of, well, why does my kid have to go with a new teacher or a separate classroom when they really like, Mrs. Noor or whoever it would be, and they may feel a little slighted. So I think that's the pushback you're going to get. And I also think you kind of are stepping on sort of management and administrative toes a little bit in the judgment call that, to keep the kids safe in there. Capping it arbitrarily at 6. I think when we discussed the numbers, I already said you're looking at 7. There was, there's one
I'm not saying that you can't go up to 7. I'm just saying that they all have to be balanced.
But you're saying that 7th child has to be assigned to another classroom, right?
If another class has less than 6.
Right. So you're effectively changing the teaching, the child's homeroom, and you're putting them in with a different teacher. That's
okay.
Happening.
So this goes back to where the inclusion part of our education, and that we establish a class that has a lot of the Title I students in one particular class.
That's why, and that's what the impetus to go forward.
And so then this is where the problem lies is that now that these students are now going to be brought in because of their needs, which I'm perfectly fine with bringing them back, but it would be much safer and a much better location is if less students is better. I'm hoping that our other teachers are well qualified enough to be able to handle these students also.
Well, I don't think it's about the qualification of the student, Bruce, or the teacher. I would never argue that. They wouldn't be working here if they weren't qualified. I'm saying what you're doing to that student, to that child, is you are changing their teacher. And in an elementary setting, while it's not the end of the world, that's a very impactful thing to do. And I don't think it's something you do lightly. They bond with their teachers, they connect, they learn how to learn within that environment with that teacher. And sometimes changing teachers or homerooms can be significant. We do it occasionally to get some better fits sometimes. There are a number of reasons why it happens, but it's a rare thing to do, and it usually would be done with a lot of back and forth from teachers' input and parent input and administrative input before you would just change a kid's assignment. And that's what I'm saying that I think is, the other part, the other thing to think about. You can certainly vote on it. You can do what you want. If you want to establish that rule, the board absolutely has the authority. I'm telling you, I wouldn't recommend it for that reason. That would be my concern. That's what I would say. And I would like Jill to weigh in on it too. I think her being the elementary principal, I think it's important for her to weigh in on this.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, you're next, Joe. Go ahead.
So yes, Bruce, to answer your questions about that, at this point in time, that's virtually impossible to do because special education schedules are made in the beginning of the school year. And the reason why kids are grouped is because we don't have a special education teacher for every grade level. Teachers go within grade levels to service students. There's no possible way to spread kids out evenly when it comes to cognitive ability level with providing with the services that these students require. So that was one of the big things that when I came to Benton to make sure our students were getting what they needed was to make sure that we are grouping students where they need to be, and that gives the teachers the ability to work. So that plan in the situation that we currently have will not work.
Okay, I have a question for you. How many aides? Okay, so we're going to have 10 students in a classroom, a teacher. How many aides are going to be assisting these teachers also? I mean, we're starting to get a rather large number when right now we're in the highest infection rate. Maybe we're coming down, but right now we're in the peak of our season, and we're going to have more and more kids inside, and then you're going to have one teacher with 2 kids, and then you're going to have one teacher with 10. I just don't see where that makes any kind of safety sense. I understand the educational part of it, but it's a very good option to be able to bring them back to get some sort of learning. The board has the ability to up or down to even nix that.
I'm sorry, I've never experienced that where, board is making decision on what classes and where kids go. That would be a first for me. But what I can tell you is that based upon the situation and the services and the IEPs and the way that they are written and the way kids are being serviced and provided their educational needs, Lindsay is more than welcome to weigh in on this as well, but that is impossible at this time. If you're saying that we need to stay underneath a certain number, I think that our staff is aware of that and they're doing their very best. I met with a teacher today that said to me, Jill, I have 8 on one day and 4 on another. Is that okay? That's just the way it works out due to their needs and their siblings that are coming into the building. And I said, yes, that is fine. We are safely spread out. We are 6 feet apart in the room when we were at full capacity. So even if we were at 10 kids or 12 kids, we're still 6 feet apart.
And this is Lindsay. And I don't really need to weigh in on anything more than Jill has already said. And the reason why is because her and I had this conversation specifically last week when she came back from Mr. Gefkin's office, and we were looking at how to schedule all of these kids and trying to essentially make it so, kind of like the way that Bruce was saying, where ideally in a perfect world, it would be great to make it fair, but based on the special education kids solely, we can't do it like that.
Mike Vogt, you've been waiting patiently. You want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I just have a question of clarification, please. Bruce, was this motion intended to be an absolute limit that administration can't have more than 6 students, or is this asking for the board to be notified if that decision happened? So if they go ahead and assign 8 students to one classroom, they need to send us a communication, or is this that they are not allowed to do that without future board approval?
It was intended to balance out if there's 3 teachers in a class in a 6th grade, that each one of the teachers would have the same amount of students teaching, not to have one teacher have 2 kids and one teacher to have 10. It was to balance out the students across all our teaching staff to teach them.
Jen Allen, I see you're next in line.
Yes, at the high school level, while I don't anticipate having 6 kids in a classroom, but if it would happen, there's absolutely no way that you can move kids to a different teacher because the students are already assigned to schedules in classes of which you cannot change. For example, we have college courses of psychology and sociology where they only have one class and one teacher. And like I'm saying, I'm not saying that, we need to have more than 6 kids, but also Penn College does ask that we do things in person if we can. We haven't moved that way at this point, but, that's an impossible limit.
This is only during the reduced learning model. This is only during this new.
But you can't change a student's class in 7th and 8th grade. I don't have any other teachers to move the kids to. It's impossible.
We don't have a bulk of students coming back at the 7th and 8th grade level right now, as we do in the elementary. We're not looking at that right now. We're looking at this. This is more designated to the reduced learning model at the elementary level, where we're bringing in the students that were invited.
Okay. Matt Yoder, I see you're waiting to make a comment.
Yeah, as a teacher myself, to me, this is a day-to-day management decision, and I just feel that it's not our decision to make. That's why we have Jill and Jen and Lindsay and Jamie to make these decisions. And I'll be honest with you, if I got a phone call and I was told that my daughter's class is over 6 kids and they're going to have to move her to a different class with different kids and a teacher who might teach differently, I'd be pretty pissed off. So that's just my way of looking at it. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm a little rusty on my parliamentary procedure here, but what we're doing is we are voting in order to have a vote. We are not actually voting on the motion, correct?
We're voting on the motion.
I believe parliamentary procedure, we need to vote in order to have it be a vote.
If you have a
Correct,
motion and
Jamie?
if you have a motion and a second, it is
Then you need to vote on that.
You have to have a motion and a second to include your motion. Then you can vote on the motion. But first you have to have it included. You're asking for something included. And so you do have a second, I believe, by Dave to consider including that motion. It would have to be voted on to be included. Then the next step, it would have to be voted on to be executed. That's parliamentary procedure. You're correct, Matt.
My whole intentions on this is for safety purposes only, not by educational. I think safety of our students is primarily number one in this situation that we're in.
Bruce, I can assure you that we will do everything in our power through this process to keep our class sizes as low as possible and to balance them out. And if we can share students in a way that's effective and it doesn't hurt them and cause them to be traumatized by being reassigned, or it's going to hurt them academically or something. But I do think, I feel very strongly that recommendation is Jill's and Lindsay's or Jen's to make in association with the teacher and to talk to the parent. I think the backlash from parents, if you said this is child number 7 and they have to go to a different homeroom, well, that might be better than maybe being a home for something. I don't think that's necessarily a fair thing. And then I think you're going to get into a situation where which ones do you pick out and say they have to be in the other room? You know, I don't think you're going to have big numbers. I think in general, you're going to be maxing out 6, 7 on an average. Like Jill just said, 8 or 4. You know, I don't think that's a big deal. We were safely accommodating 20 students in those classrooms. I think that to say 6 is not, I mean, you kind of have it's a new rule of social distancing, I guess. I guess that would be 10 feet or something, Bruce. So I think it's a hard position to defend personally, but I understand what I understand what you're saying for safety and why you're saying it, but I think you have to, you have a second to be included if everyone understands what that is, and then you can move forward and vote on it if you want. I think you're putting us in a tough spot though, and I do trust that the administration and the teachers will work hard to keep the numbers fair and balanced and low in a way that would satisfy most of what you're asking for, I think, without necessarily.
I would remove my motion if you'll go to Ellis and ask him if you have unbalanced class sizes, if we're liable for having so much unbalanced class sizes.
Well, I know the answer to it already. I can get it from Ellis, but the answer is, yeah, there's no liability there. The liability goes with going, violating mask rules and 6 feet and willingly violating that type of stuff. That's where the liability lies. And we wouldn't even be close to that. I will say,
if the board would like me to remove my motion, I will. I just wanted to bring it up as discussion topic.
I think you're doing it absolutely appropriately, and you're, doing the procedure, Bruce. So I think, as far as how you're addressing this and what you're doing, there's nothing wrong with how you've approached it. And
I'm not, I have no skin in the game. I'm just asking if the board would like to include it or include it. I'd just like to know. We can vote it up or down. I mean,
well, I think that's actually your next step because it was seconded.
Okay.
So you can vote it up or down. And then if it's not included, then it's a moot point at this point. I will assure you that I will follow up with Ellis and specifically ask him that question, but I'm pretty confident I already know the answer.
And I also like to know, have a final of all teachers and amount of people per day,
Yeah, we're
per
absolutely,
session.
we have to do that anyway, and we'll break that down per class per day.
Correct.
We
And
have to
then
do that. I will
no,
share
I
that.
mean, and distribute it to the board.
Yeah, I will share that with the board as soon as we have that information together. That's still a work in progress.
Where do we stand on this now? Do we need to vote on including this as a motion?
I
Or are
believe you
you
do.
withdrawing your motion, Bruce?
I believe the parliamentary procedure would say that you would vote on including it or not, since it was seconded. It was submitted by Bruce as a walk-in. It was seconded, I believe, by Dave. So the board should vote if they want to consider it as a motion or not. Obviously, if you don't consider it as a motion, it's a dead issue. If you consider it as a motion, then you would vote on the motion.
Okay.
Unless you guys have the opportunity to rescind it if you want to.
I can rescind it, but I'm not happy. You know, I'm just saying, it's just, I'm trying to maintain safety here. And less is best.
Yeah.
Because I would like to know on these, I would also like to know the amount of people that will be in the classroom on all classrooms. So, so teachers, aides, and students per class, per session.
Okay. No, and we're still compiling that based on recommendations and feedback. But we'll certainly have that bounce out. Some of that information we already have, but we'll certainly put all that together, and I will issue a board report with that. And we can look at making adjustments where they make sense if the numbers look a little high in one area or not. And obviously that's stuff we can discuss.
Okay, so I'll rescind that one. I might rescind them all, but we're gonna have good discussion tonight. Okay, the second.
Okay.
The second motion.
That proposed motion then is rescinded, Missy.
Got it.
Okay, second motion.
Okay, move on then, Bruce.
I make a motion that there will be 100% mask wearing compliance while in any building. There will be no mask breaks allowed inside the building during the reduced learning model. If a student has a documented medical note, this mask wearing mandate may be deemed not in effect. But the parents of the remaining classmates need to be notified there is an individual not wearing a mask while in the classroom.
Okay. We want to get some board discussion on this before we proceed then?
Yes.
Yes. Any comments from the board?
I have one. Has there been an issue with this?
Not to my knowledge, Kathleen, Pete. I think there, Bruce, maybe, and I don't want to, I don't want to speculate too much. I'm assuming because this is winter and you're thinking the kids may not go outside for the breaks because
they can go outside and take their mask off all they want. I just don't want, for safety purposes, taking off your mask inside a classroom is contaminating the classroom.
Yeah, I don't think we really had that happening at all. The mask breaks were almost exclusively outside, and we let.
If it's outside the building, that's perfectly fine, but no.
So I don't think it was an issue. If your concern is maybe because it was colder, and that they would be doing it inside, that wasn't a practice that any of the teachers were really doing, to my knowledge at all. I certainly didn't get any feedback, and most of the kids were great about it. You know, they were great. They were great about the masks. They were good. You know, so it wasn't an issue. But if you want it to be set,
I want it to be. I want it to be set in stone.
I believe it's already happening, and I believe it's being enforced. So, but
can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Jamie, I have a question on that. doesn't our policy right now allow for mask breaks?
Yeah, they do, but they were, I think the distinction is Bruce is making it none inside. And I don't think the policy stated that before. However, I do believe that in practice, that's really the only way that most teachers were doing it. I think our teachers and students were very diligent about it, so. I think there were occasional singular mask breaks where one child maybe went in the back of the room, behavioral issues, stuff like that. And I think you kind of have to carve that out because a lot of times that's something else. But yeah, I think Michael has something to say.
Yeah, Mike Vogt, you're next.
Thanks. With the current model, are students staying for lunch? Are students eating at the district right now?
We were splitting them out, and they weren't. They had bag lunches and stuff, but changing over, we would be changing that. So, yeah, they were eating, but not at the volume that we would be serving, and we were going to work with nutrition to get back to away from. Really, this has been sort of a bag lunch model on the limited scale we were open, and we were going to try to get back to more of a traditional cafeteria, but low volume spread out. And with less than half volume plus during the day, we were going to have a pretty widespread cafeteria. But they would be eating moving forward like they were in the fall. That was the vision.
The state mandates that you can, in dining, you can unmask.
Well, they have to.
Yes.
But they would be more than 6 feet when we do it.
Okay. Any other comments on the mask issue? We've had a motion and a second to include this as a motion. We need now, I guess, to vote on it as a board. We want to include it as a motion. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct, Carl.
Okay. Missy, we handle a vote on that?
Sure. Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborg,
No.
Mr. Vogt,
No.
Mr. Wolf, Mr. Yoder,
No.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Ms. DeYoung,
No.
Mr. Griffith.
So no.
Okay, the board will not consider that motion. You want to move on then to your next item?
Yep. I'd like to make a motion that no COVID-19 related correspondence will be distributed to parents or public without 24-hour notice to the school board. The notice should include the final draft of said correspondence. If a single board member requests to discuss the correspondence, a special meeting will be held. This excludes the need for building closures or notices of exposure.
Bruce, I think you might be violating some other CDC and public health policies there. If we got to, you have to be careful there.
It's just that this whole week was on notices and on what happened. We don't need to get a second on this, but I'd like to discuss it because, we gave out notices and Aaron Lee or whatever, and I think that it just did not go well.
Oh, are you referring more to the status of closing and being open and how we were doing it?
No, I'm talking about how it was handled on contacting parents and family. When the email came out on the 13th, I requested that it's something that we should look into as the board. And then the notices were taken out and sent out, and there was different correspondences.
What COVID notices though? You said COVID notices. I'm not.
No, notices of exposure. No, I said that. No, COVID notices, basically like the correspondence that we're going to be bringing back all the students in if we could have read that, there would have been a lot less. If we would have been notified of what was actually going to be said, there would have been a lot less headaches this week.
It would also provide for a more uniform message that's going out, that we actually have a clue what's coming around, or what we feel we discussed is actually the message that we're portraying, Mr. Gefkin.
Okay, I guess I'm just confused about what when you say COVID, my mind automatically goes to COVID cases and exposures and things like that, which we report and track and try to track down. I think that's a separate issue than maybe what our changing our protocol to and our while staying remote but doing this outreach. I guess I just don't think of that as, while everything is COVID related. That's not how I thought what that messaging was.
I'm just saying that some of these outreaches that we're doing on different things, they should be gone through, with the board, and so that we could see the notices before the public sees it, and that we're on board with it, and we have the answers if we have the questions before we have people calling and saying, what are we doing? I can rescind, not ask for a second on this as
Are you
long as.
talking about like our school reach, the school reach messages?
No, I'm talking about like this last week when we invited, the emails were sent out to parents inviting all students, when some of us didn't think all students were included.
No, I understand now, Bruce. And I apologize for the confusion. And I'll tell you, that's on me. It's on me.
I know, that's what you said before, but I'm just saying, it just, as long as I just want to air it out. I mean, that's all.
And that's fine. And I can, I get after the conversation today that I think some of us just had a different view of what the board consensus was. And probably that should have been more clear. I think, again, not everyone understood the volume of kids we were talking about, just including Title I and things like that. So I do think, and I will stand by, I was trying to adhere to the will of the board and help address the multiple issues that we were faced with. And also, I thought it was clear that the teachers were going to reach out to parents, and that it was all parents. And so I do apologize for the miscommunication. I will try to do a better job, and I can tell you, all I can do is assure you that I will try not to let this happen again, where any of you feel like you didn't have the information, or I was going rogue here. I was trying to honor what I thought the board wanted. And I did have multiple discussions with multiple board members during this time. And so I do apologize if ultimately the buck stops with me. Any messages that went out that were a little ahead or behind were well-meaning on behalf of teachers and others, but it's ultimately my fault, because I then misdirected if I wasn't clear, or the consensus of the board wasn't clear. I kind of thought it was, but that was my perception, interpretation. I feel like normally I'm pretty good at that, but I clearly missed the mark with some of it this week. So again, that's on me. But if you want to make a motion that there's a 24-hour rule or something on that, you certainly can. But I can assure you, this isn't the position that I think any of us want to be in, that there's some confusion amongst what the general will was. And I think that's what it comes down to.
I'm okay as long as you keep us informed.
Yeah.
Dr. Gefkin, I wasn't informed on Wednesday due to, internet issues with being deleted from messages. That type of stuff happens. Right. But what Bruce's idea here is that we get it confirms that we will be receiving and sending out a consistent message with which the board agrees to our parents.
Right.
It adds a layer of consistency in all, if there is a closure or something of an emergency situation, then obviously, that's a you call. That's a you call. But the messages that went out this week we're all over the place. And this allows that we at least are on board and don't have to find what's going on through a message from one of our children's teachers.
Yeah, no, I understand, Dave. I understand where Bruce is coming from. And ultimately, like I said, I mean, the buck stops with me. If there was some confusion as it trickled down through about what I felt the board's will was and how we could address it. And also, we were trying to work through our teachers. And in doing so, that did open up some other issues. And we tried to manage through those. And I know this took a week, but it all seemed to happen real fast. I can tell you from my perspective, some of this stuff happened very quickly, and it was responsive to a lot of questions that we got. And it was a constant feedback loop all last week. And so I apologize for not being better at communicating that to all board members and making sure that we were clear. But again, that's on me. That's not on anybody else. I should have double checked at certain times over the week, and I clearly didn't do the best job at that. So I can assure you I will try to do better with that. But again, if you want to put something in writing for 24 hours or something like that, I think that's tough because not everybody responds to their emails. Not everybody, you know what I mean? There are other goofy miscues that happen. That go out, and so it would be tough to be able to tell that everybody knew. It's tough to know what others know, and so But I can just I'm going to promise you I can try to do better and make sure that we don't have that kind of miscommunication. But again, I can assure you that I was trying to do what I thought the board wanted, and that so, but you could proceed. I guess you have a motion, Bruce.
I didn't make I didn't ask for a second.
Okay.
As long as you agree that you're going to try to give us more of the final correspondence of what you're going to direct your administration to doing.
Yeah.
So that we know about it before it's released to the public.
Yeah, this was a complex one. There was a lot this week, and I can see where it went wrong, and hopefully lessons learned. And I assure you, I'll do my best to not let anything like that happen again.
Dr. Gefkin, we're not trying to, I believe me, I'm not trying to micromanage here, and I do not envy your position or Jill's position or, anyone's position that's on this call right now. But we have some things that are going on, and it's broad-based right across the board that I was under the impression we said one thing, and now we are hearing a week later that there are other things going on that are taking place that I don't believe we agreed with. And that's what we're trying to, or I'm trying to get figuring that should not happen, but they are.
Yeah, no, I get it, Dave. I get what you're saying, and you're not wrong. There are some things clearly in review that probably a little bit further than what was 100% discussed. Some of those things developed this week that we're discussing them tonight. So they just, and some of it I can see in review how perhaps I was off base in some of that message or part of my understanding. So yeah, I get it, and
the issue ends up being there are things out there right now that I do not believe can be walked back.
Well, I can walk stuff back. I'll take the hit. I mean, if it's my fault, I'll take the hit for it. I'm a big boy, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody or do anything. I do think that everyone is trying their best to do what's best for the students and not ignore all of the safety stuff and our overwhelming concern, which I think was clearly expressed by the board, that this was a public health and safety issue, and we needed to keep that in the forefront. I don't think that's been ignored as we've tried to navigate through this. So again, I think the general will of the board has been respected, but I do think that some of the directives maybe got a little bit off. And I am the one who you charge and with the responsibility of doing that. So ultimately, if there's some misdirection or some miscommunication, that's on me. So there's nothing else I can do but own it and tell you I recognize what some of the issues are. I don't intend to let them happen again, but this is a very complex time. We have a lot of people coming at us from a bunch of different angles, and a lot of people coming at the teachers with different things. And so there were some decisions made on the fly that I still believe reflected what I thought the will of the board was. But in talking about it tonight, I can see how some of that might have been a little off topic. So again, we don't want it to happen again. I can promise and assure you that I would never intentionally let it happen. Wasn't intentional this time, but again, if there's something to be voted on, or you want to change a protocol or put in a 24-hour rule or something, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
We'll let it go as it is right now. We had the discussion.
Okay, that's good. And
Okay.
then
Next.
Bruce will move on to your next item.
Okay, the next discussion, I'm not even gonna make a motion to it. I'm just gonna read what I have and then we can have the discussion, and I think this will lighten up a lot more. Okay, so what I have written down is no additional 7th through 12th grade students will be added to in-house learning without board notification. If a school board member requests a meeting to discuss the addition of the new student or students, a special meeting will be held and the entire board will approve or disapprove the request. This does not include the addition of students that need additional education due to students failing a subject or requests made for additional learning opportunities for a student that are academically struggling. So this is to eliminate a bulk back to 7th through 12th while we're in this reduced learning period, but does not eliminate the student's ability to get special education for failing subjects or academically struggling students.
I think Jen could maybe jump in and address this, but I don't believe at 7 through 12, any student that would have been talked to about some remediation or whatever, that was really where they were at. They would all have fallen into the criteria that you already carved out, Bruce. But maybe Jen, am I off here?
Yes, Mr. Gefkin, you're correct. It's students failing or have special education services.
So we're accidentally in agreement there. Maybe not accidentally, Bruce, but that was the only, it was definitely different and a very heavy feature focused.
Okay, so where this comes from is from the January 13th email that was sent to us as a board, which says about how we will proceed with the elementary teachers to reach out to all their students to offer them opportunities to attend 2 days a week.
Right.
Okay, so the teachers will balance out these classroom sizes and create the schedule.
Okay.
We will reach out to the high school through a larger messaging platform to make sure that the parents know that we'll have the opportunity for upper grades as well. So what that means is, so interpreting that sentence, that we'll be reaching out through a larger messaging platform to make sure that the parents know that this option for upper grades as well means that you could, in fact, do the entire 7th through 12th like you're doing the elementary.
Yeah.
I can explain to you what was done. Like I said, the teachers compiled failures and they were sent to their team leaders. The team leaders looked at the grades and the guidance counselors calculated students failing for the year. We met again as a team and combed through the list today, identified approximately 40 students to call to bring in Mondays and Wednesdays. The only other possibility where we would need to bring kids in is if a parent calls and requests it. If you want me to give you that student's name and you can talk to the parent and decide.
No, it's not. It was not to eliminate that.
Asking.
What it is that the
Bruce, we didn't do what I said we were doing in that letter. We did not do
okay.
At that point when I wrote that last week, and again, this was sort of a fluid dynamic. My intention was to let the board know that was what I thought we should do. and maybe reach out and just say, hey, if your child's struggling academic or whatever, you can reach out to us, or reach out to your homeroom teacher or whatever assigned teacher and have that discussion. We ultimately did not do that. I think that was in recognition that that would have been more of an opening secondary, and that was not what the will of the board was. There's some recognition to that there. And instead it became focused on, but we have these kids that are failing and we have problems and we have parents that are calling and we need to address some of these issues. So it became.
It was not to limit anything on failing students or people that are struggling.
Okay, there's one other group.
It was, I didn't make the motion. This is discussion time right now.
Okay, I just want to let
This was more to just address this email that Geffkin said about doing a larger platform and having it opened up as well.
Yeah, and ultimately we didn't do that, Bruce. So again, that was, I wrote that. I apologize. That's not what we ended up doing. It's what I thought we would do at that point to make it easier. But again, after talking with the administrative staff and working through it, and Jill and Jen and Lindsay's recommendations, I was a little off message there, and that's why we have a good admin team. They reined that in. And we did not put out a bulk message offering that up to everyone. We did rein it in and focus and just recognize that we had some students in some serious need, and those are the ones that were called. And I think in some cases, we almost had to do that. So.
I do want to let you know, we have numerous Penn College courses and AP courses, which require hands-on instruction, which the students haven't gotten. So there might be times where we would have to bring in kids in groups, small groups, to go through a lab so that they meet the requirements to receive their college credits.
That's fine. I mean, that's 100% fine. I just want the whole board to talk about what their expectation is for this whole bad time we're in right now.
Yeah. Dave,
Jen.
Yes.
It's Dave Lipinski. According to state rules, those kids have the ability to come in. We also have our special education students that are in those groups. Are you telling me now we have students that are going to be coming into the building that do not lie within special needs or those special classes that need that to fulfill their requirements?
Are you asking, do we have students in Penn College classes that are coming in right now?
No, what I am asking, I understand that we have students that are special needs at the secondary level. I understand that we have students that need to do the lab type things to fulfill college credits. But do we have students that have been invited into the building because of grades that do not follow, that do not fall in those two criteria?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we are following the state regulations in that secondary level, because they are quite clear on what we have going on, who is allowed and who is not. Those groups that you have in are allowed in. But I just don't want this opened up to the general public at this time, because it's not recommended, or it's not recommended by the state, period. And we have followed, Dr. Gefkin, please correct me, we have really followed to a T, to a T what the state is requiring us to do.
Yeah, we have, Dave, and again, that's part of why we are in the position that we're in now, because remaining in this model while trying to do some outreach it's a tough path right now, because it's you can't serve two masters, and the state is essentially, at least people believe that the state has told us to open back up, but we're trying to address that while still adhering to the other guidelines. And that's really what they did say. And, we recognize it. We're trying. I think we've had lively discussion, certainly last week and this week and in between. We're trying, and when we have, I'm proud to say, I don't believe we violated any of the guidelines so far.
Jamie, this is Matt Yoder. And maybe Jen can chime in. I thought I caught two different things there. Are we allowing students who are failing to come in at the high school?
That was my question.
I'm confused on what you're asking me, but here's what we did. We met with the teachers and the team leaders. They gave them the names of students who are failing their classes. We looked at first and second marking periods, and we targeted the kids that were in danger of failing a course or of failing a grade level for the year. And those are the students, approximately 40 students that were asking to come in. That does not mean that they will say yes.
Okay, so basically right now we are not following the state guidelines then.
Well, Dave, a lot of those fall into some other categories, so there might be a few there that, they could come in for a day for tutoring or something, not necessarily coming in for multiple days. That's all in the works right now. The only students that have been coming into our building up to this point have been students who either would have, the ones for the Penn College haven't even come in. Their session starts tomorrow, I believe. So that will necessitate some of them coming in. The other ones have been only special education students. So we have followed the guidelines. We have been talking with teachers. There are teachers who feel very strongly. There's certain kids that are right on the edge of some of those. There are some crossover kids. We have some special education kids who haven't come in. We have kids who are identified, maybe ES and some other things that will fall under the guidelines that we're trying to get to come. And they are within the guidelines. So we'll have to look at that. But, at this point, we have not invited any kids back that have fallen outside of those guidelines. The teachers have just compiled a list and we started talking to people. We can reevaluate that. And certainly if the board wants, we want to make sure that nobody outside those guidelines come in, so we adhere to them. We'll make sure that we cross-check that list and don't allow students who don't fall into that criteria. But I think you'll find that several of them are identified for other reasons.
I just want to make sure in the terms of fairness, we don't end up at the secondary level wide open like we are now at the elementary school level, because the word fairness is not a very fair word.
Sure, it's very subjective. I agree with you, Dave. And we can make sure that we rein that in. That is not out of hand. That is not an issue. That's something that we can absolutely make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines once we kind of cross-reference our lists. And we're talking a totality of maybe 40 kids. I would say more than half of them probably do qualify. And out of that, it'll be a struggle to get some of them to come. That's an unfortunate reality.
Jen, thank you very much. And Mr. Yoder, thank you for helping me get that cleared up.
Okay, so I have one more. Are we done with this topic?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we can conclude that topic and move on then.
Okay, so the next topic I have is teachers in the building Monday through Friday during regular scheduled hours, and also in this, what I have written up, that the teachers must document at least one individual weekly interaction with all students on their schedule. What this is about is, phone calls that teachers are not being there. And what my concern is for a discussion topic is we're going to have our elementary staff teaching 20% of the students 80% of the time, and 80% of our students virtually. And we've had numerous discussions talking about how teachers aren't able to keep up with their workload on the virtual, even when they are virtual. And now they're going to have 80% of their time teaching students in class, where they're going to be dedicating their time to them students. how are the 80% that are out virtually, how is that going to be handled? Because I think in like 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to find out that it's not being handled well, and that we're going to have to come in full time.
Bruce, we've addressed this multiple times within the staff and administration. What our plan is, and it's very similar. High school, the high school is not going to have the kids there, but with the teachers in 4 days a week, we've outlined some other things that we have as expectations. The amount of times they're going to spend, putting out stuff live, whether they have kids in their classroom or not. Setting up their classrooms in a way that they can continue to teach virtually. I think in a lot of ways it'll be beneficial for them to kind of be doing, it's sort of multitasking. It's not one or the other. There's a lot of times where it's both. And I think even speaking to some of our board members who are teachers and what they do, there are a lot of strategies. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive that you're 20% of the, 80% of the time with 20% of the students, leaving 20% of the time for the 80%. I think that it's more, you're going to be teaching, and there's a lot of opportunity for interaction and time to go and address some of the online stuff. I really think it'll probably be better, a better experience, because, we have teachers for full days working from their classrooms with all their resources, and, can do a lot of innovative stuff from there.
Is there any way on an administrative level that you can have the teachers contacting these students once a week, all their students once a week?
They should all be doing that at least more than once a week. I've heard
we've had parents saying that they haven't heard to them since the whole time they've been on this thing. Now I don't know if it's true or not, but that's the comment.
We've had a few of those assertions, and we followed up with those. There are a couple cases where, unfortunately, there have been some people who haven't maybe put their best foot forward, but we're dealing with that individually and administrative level. I can tell you that one of those things is a conversation I'm having with Ellis right now about one. So
I'm just saying, that's all, as long as it's being addressed.
Yeah, we
can't have that.
But the majority are doing a really good job, and we're going to take the best practices from the majority and use those moving forward. And I do think that most of our teachers are good at multitasking, keeping both of those things going at once.
I'm hoping I'm wrong, but I just don't see how teaching that less of kids, it's gonna tax our teachers so hard to do the 4 day a week and then have the other 80% outside. It's gonna tax them so much that I don't see how that it's gonna be successful, but I'm hoping I'm wrong.
Well, we're monitoring, Bruce, and I think many of our teachers are looking forward to the opportunity to be back in and to spend that time a little differently. And so I'm hopeful. I'm always trying to be optimistic, and I think a lot of our teachers are going to excel.
That's all I have for tonight for discussion purposes. I don't know if anyone else has anything that they want to discuss related to some of the stuff that went down this week.
Dr.
We
Gefkin.
can move on.
Somebody has a comment. I can see who it is. Let me see.
Carl, it was me.
Oh, it's you. Okay. Your hand's stuck up again.
Yeah,
No,
it's
it was
not-
Mike Vogt, but you go ahead. Mike, why don't you go first?
Sure, thanks. I just had a question about sending home work packets and things like that. Is that something that we're moving away from as a district, or something? I just want to make sure that nothing's kind of standing in the way of getting as many learning materials home as possible. I understand there's a lot of students who might not have the printing services at home or anything like that, and I understand that there are ways to kind of sidestep and use online resources, but especially with things like handwriting or some of the lower level things, I think getting those packets home, getting things printed out and mailed out or picked up is really beneficial for those lower age students, the younger students. Is that something we're moving away from?
I don't know. I think we try to encourage kids to use the technology as much as possible, but obviously there's that realization, and I agree with you 100%, Mr. Bo, that especially at the younger ages, those manipulative type things, worksheets and all, where it's hands-on, are important. And I honestly think that coming back into more in-house time for the teachers is going to make it easier for them to produce that material and get it out.
So we do have the resources to print those out and to mail
Yeah.
them and everything. We don't have a budget issue or anything.
Well, it's always expensive to make that stuff, but it's not a budget breaker, and it's certainly not something that should stop teachers at this point from utilizing that, especially in the lower grades. We had a lot of requests for that separately for different things, and we try to accommodate where we can. But especially the lower grades, I don't see that being an issue, and that's something that Jill can manage with her teachers.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.
Along with our elementary class sizes, can you also include the high school students attending also with that?
Yeah, we get you all the numbers, Bruce. You're not going to see much at that level, but
That's fine.
regardless,
I'd just like to see the numbers.
Yep, no problem.
Mike, I can address that packet issue. I think there was some confusion on that. I had gotten asked by teachers if we could make packets and send home, and I said absolutely not. What I meant by that was that we aren't going back to making packets again. I'm fine with supplemental materials. The reason I said we weren't making packets is because we utilize AE. So there was some confusion about that. I know some parents have reached out to me. I talked to my K1. I talked to every teacher group today and kind of clarified some of that confusion. First grade just rings right now a bell to me of having that conversation with them. I think where there's some skewed opinions that have gone out into the public is that I said we can't afford to do that. I did not say that. What I said was that we aren't sending packets home to families. We're not going back down that road. And the teachers were asking, can we send supplemental materials home? So the supplemental materials is fine. We weren't doing the large packets again. So I just wanted to make sure I addressed that publicly as well.
Yeah,
Thank you so much I appreciate that. Thank you for the update.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that, Jill. We did push for people to utilize the technology as much as possible, and so we didn't want to packets in lieu of computers was not really what we were doing. It should have been exactly as Jill described, and I think she was 100% right to take that approach, and I think ultimately that pans out. But supplemental materials, absolutely, we can still do, and it would never we can't afford it issue. It was, but those stories get ahead of us sometimes.
Okay. I think we've had a lot of good discussion here. Hopefully that puts some of these issues to bed and clarifies things that might have been unclear in people's minds. But if there's no further discussion, then we'll move on to the athletic committee.
Can you scroll up a little bit more so I can make sure there's nothing more than? Okay.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, so
like I said,
so I have
block vote.
We're gonna block vote the A and B, and then I have 2 walk-in motions from the athletic committee meeting. I'd like to make a motion for athletic items A and B for wrestling. For A is for approve Kevin Strickland as a assistant varsity wrestling coach. And B is to approve Michael Roan as a volunteer wrestling coach, all pending clearances.
So moved.
Second.
I didn't hear a second. Somebody want to chime in?
Second.
Michael Bath,
Okay.
or I'm sorry, Mike Vote, second it.
Okay, good. I didn't hear it. Okay, there's no further discussion on A and B. We'll move on to a roll call vote. Missy?
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborg,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Ms. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess.
Yes.
Okay. Motions A and B have been passed. We'll move on then, Bruce, with your walking
Okay.
motions.
I'd like to make a motion to open up to spectators and athletes at home sporting events to the following gym capacity. High school gym not to exceed 38 people, elementary gym not to exceed 80 people. To be monitored and tickets distributed by the athletic director. These tickets will be distributed to senior parents and or athletes' parents that may achieve a milestone. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Do we have any discussion?
I believe we discussed in the athletic committee meeting, there's approximately two seniors on the basketball team. Jamie, yeah.
There was two cheerleading, two like on girls and boys basketball, and I think 3 wrestling seniors.
So we'd only be talking a very few people for the home matches. Again, consistent with all of the governor's orders not to go over any seating capacities.
Okay. Any other comments on it? Okay, then let's go on to a. Oh, you want to cover the second one first before we vote on it, or vote on them one at a time?
Okay, yeah. Then also on that, I'd like to make a motion to add Matt Weller as a volunteer wrestling coach pending all clearances.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on adding that individual? Okay. And we'll move on to vote on items C and D under the athletic committee. Roll call vote, Missy.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Misty Young,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes to A and B and D and no to C.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski.
Yes.
Okay. Then items A, B, C, and D are passed. Okay. We'll move on then to buildings and grounds. Mr. Lipinski, you're up.
In speaking with Mr. Hardcorn, we will be having a meeting soon. I would also like to say that in walking through the high school today, with the rain we had last night, the roof looks very, very nice, and it seems to be doing a fantastic job to what we have going on there. It looks really good.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay, we'll move on to finance and insurance. George, again, we're going to block vote on this, so you don't have to read the whole motion.
Okay, I need a motion and a second to adopt the resolution of the Board of School Directors of the Benton Area School District electing to not increase its real estate tax above the Act 1 index for 2021-2022 school year as presented in the meeting documents to the Act 1 index at 3.9%.
Bruce, so moved.
Okay.
Matt Yoder, second.
Roll call vote. Oh, okay. I thought that was there. Okay. Move on then to a roll call vote.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Misty Young,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne.
Yes. Okay, the motion is passed. We'll move on then to Personnel Committee. I don't believe Lance is with us, So Kathleen, would you just propose that motion? You do not have to read each of the items on it. We're going to block vote. That's on A and, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, on A and B. We have a new one on there, motion number 2, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Do you want me to read it, Carl? Or Kathleen? Okay, I'll read it.
I got it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I got it. I'd like to make a motion to approve personnel items A and B as listed. A, special sick leave days, approve special sick leave days for the following. A, employee 1147.
You don't have to read the whole motion, Dave.
Okay.
Just the headers.
We're going to block vote on
Okay,
it.
special sick leave days for 5 employees. And also B, the intent to retire of another teacher.
That is correct. Good. Okay. There's no further discussion on that. Let's go to roll call. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Second, Bruce.
Yep. Okay. If there's no further discussion on it, then we'll go to a roll call vote on items 1A and 1B. Missy?
Mr. Yoder,
Yes to all.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Ms. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes to all.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes to all.
Mr. Vogt.
Yes to all.
Okay.
Carl?
Go ahead.
Carl, I would just personally like to congratulate and thank Ms. Hummelsdorf for her years of service.
Okay. Well put. Thank you, Dave. Okay, the motion is passed, A and B. Moving on to number 2. If you want, I'll read it to keep it simple. We haven't discussed this before, so I'll need a motion and a second to approve Lindsay Farrell as a bus driver for the 2020-2021 school year. Do I have a
moved.
motion and a second? Okay. Second?
Second, Griffith.
Okay. Any discussion on that item? Then we'll move to a roll call vote, Missy.
Mr. Knaus,
Yes.
Ms. DeYoung,
Yes.
Mr. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Lipinski,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. Vogt,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is passed. Move on then to the personnel or the policy committee. Bruce, do you have anything to bring up?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. We'll move forward then to supplies and transportation committee. Kathleen?
Nothing.
Okay. And moving on to textbooks, curriculum and planning. George?
I have nothing unless Jill has anything she would like to add, but I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the health and safety committee meeting. Matt?
I really don't have anything in addition to what, the majority of the conversation was tonight.
Okay, it's fine. Moving on into the Lycoming CTC. I know Lance is not with us. I am not aware of any further discussion from the Lycoming CTC people, unless Mr.
We are waiting now for, Carl, just a quick update. I reached
Yeah,
out
that's fine.
to Columbia Montorvo Tech to write a letter explaining the position and our relationship with them. Lycoming CTC is writing a similar letter, both requesting on our behalf to reassign us and to Lycoming CTC officially, and that would allow us to, it would allow their board to take the next steps. So we are working with Dr. Lee Burkett at the state Career and Technical Education Office. And that is what she's instructed us to do at this juncture. So we are asking for, I asked Ken Kreider at Columbia Montorville Tech to do that, and I believe he'll produce something soon.
Okay. Very good then. We'll wait to see what comes out of it. Moving on then to the CSIU. Kathleen, anything to update us?
Yes. At the last meeting, they did their normal stuff, paid bills and hired and all that kind of stuff. And the spotlight part of the meeting was their elect program. And that is for pregnant and or parenting youth under age 22. They're provided help with returning to school, getting their GED, and they also provide healthcare, nutrition, child development, and goal settings for both parents. And I just also wanted to let people know that the board members may want to think of who's going to be your next representative at CSIU, because I am moving. I should probably be here through April, but something to think about.
Okay. Well, we
Are you
thank you
going
for
to
your
Hawaii?
involvement.
No, Mifflinville.
Oh, okay.
That's close to Hawaii, though.
Yeah, right.
Dave, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to add something? I didn't catch it right away.
Thank you, Carl. I would like to thank CSIU. This past week, my son received a packet, and in it was a lot of things about student well-being and a lot of activities. Please forgive me, I don't know who all received that packet. If it was just Nick, well, yay, Nick. But it was a really well done, nicely put together mailing. It had some interactivities and some special gifts in there. And there were a lot of local businesses that were involved in putting that together. So I would just like to convey that personal thank you to them. It was a nice gesture.
Okay, thank you for the comment. We'll move on then. Do we have any unfinished business? Do we have any new business? Okay. Then we'll move on for the opportunity for visitors to address the board. Again, the guidelines that we always talk about, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. State your name and your address when you begin to speak. And if you raise your hand, I will see it and I will call upon you. And if you please wait your turn so that everybody has a chance to say their piece. I'm going to look at the list of attendees now, and with Brady's help, we'll open up your mic if you want to speak.
If you're a call-in user, you can do *9 and that'll raise your hand. And then when I give you the ability to speak, if you're one of the call-in users, if you do 6, it'll unmute yourself.
Okay. The first one I see is Pamela Yost. You now have the floor. Have you unmuted Pamela, Brady?
I did. I allowed it so that she's able to unmute herself.
Oh, there she is now. Okay, Pamela, you may speak.
Thank you very much. As we continue to remain in this virtual format, my questions are really around the high school curriculum. And really, what enhancements or what different expectations could we receive? What different expectations could we expect to see from our teachers? My child is a high school student, and there are several of his classes in which he has only once since November had actual interaction with his teachers. And I can tell you that is in at least 3 of his classes, and he has 6 actual periods during the day. I would like to know, what are we doing differently? So I had heard during this conversation that we will be promoting more live teaching, but that's only 2 days a week. And I feel that there is a significant learning gap that has happened for all of these children since November. So while we say that Mondays and Wednesdays are going to be reserved for those that have the greatest need, I would love to know what statistics have been looked at to determine who the greatest need is. Because I feel a student that was a 99 GPA and is now maybe a 90 GPA is worthy of just as much consideration as someone who is failing. So my question is, what are the different expectations that will be put in place for teachers to actually teach from now till February?
Okay. I'll let Mr. Gefton or Mrs. Shoup respond to that, please.
Well, I can address that right away. I mean, I honestly hope that you have reached out to the school if that's the case. If you have not had interaction since November, or it's once or twice. I mean, that is not the standard that we have held our teachers to, and it's not the expectation. And to hear that is, I hope that you would have reached out and or, you know, earlier and let us sort of get ahead of this. It's kind of behind it now. But that's one part of it. I encourage you to reach out to your teachers or reach out to building level administrators and let us know those type of things. That's certainly not the standard that we're holding to, and that's certainly not the expectation. So that's one end of it. The other end of it is, I don't think anybody said 2 days a week. Teachers are working 4 days a week, and they're going to be in and working. Miss Allen has spoken with many teachers about best practices and making sure they're incorporated. And it's if there's some specific teachers that we could talk to you about and what classes they are and where you think that's behind. I would encourage you to reach out to her, and she can address those issues. That's not something I've heard consistently, and that's a long period of time for that to kind of go in the direction that you're indicating. So that's not what we wanted. That's not how it should be working. And we're concerned about all the students. As far as data and matrices, we look at their grades. We look at interaction. We're trying to see who's falling behind, who's getting their stuff done, who isn't. And that's one of the main indicators. And we do rely a lot on the teacher feedback as to what they see in their students and what's happening. So again, if you have specific complaints about teachers and subject matter, I think it's something to call in and address with the building level administrators so that we can get to the bottom of it.
So I'm not sure if I get a chance to review it or not, but just wanted to let you know that I have called the principal of the high school, and I was informed that she was not able to mandate the use of Zoom. So if that is the case, is that going to be the case going forward? Because if that is true, then how are these students actually being taught anything?
Live streaming classes and mandating children attending them is different than mandating teachers using that platform to reach out. What we were concerned about is that we have a lot of students, and it has panned out, even though the internet has proven to be a little bit better than we thought. We have surveyed multiple times, and many people have indicated that they weren't able to, even if they had internet, weren't able to have reliable internet. And we felt it was not fair to students to mandate them be attending live sessions because they just simply couldn't. They didn't have the bandwidth. Parents working at home needing that bandwidth, et cetera. So, or multiple students in the same household and then just not having enough internet. So we felt it was unfair to hold children accountable for attendance in those classes and being able to participate in live streaming. That's why the Zoom mandate is not something that we do enforce, but we can certainly have teachers put stuff out, try to live stream some things for kids who can, but not holding kids accountable. So I think that's a little bit, maybe a little confusion there. On the other end, we have a lot of teachers that have put out a lot of material and links and things to not only stuff that they created, but other things that go along with that. And then they should be reinforcing that, recording themselves, and sending that out to students as supplemental material, in addition to the online curriculum. So that's what we're doing. I mean, we can keep working at it. We keep getting better at it. I think many of our teachers have gotten better at it during this time, and we'll certainly keep working on that.
Thank you for that. And I don't want to tie up the entire school board with this. I just wanted to make sure that it was known that maybe not everyone is following the same structure, and maybe they should. So maybe I'll just give you a call tomorrow, Mr.
Oh, I'd appreciate it, and anything I can help you work through. And we can talk about the individual needs of your kid and how and their classes. We'll go right through the schedule, and Miss Allen is very good at that, and so is Mrs. Shook. So we can make sure that the needs are addressed.
Okay. Are there any more comments from the public? I don't see anybody that's raised their hand. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for their input today. I think it was a very productive meeting, and I appreciate people being patient while we're trying to work with this virtual format to conduct our meetings. It's not the easiest way to conduct a meeting, but we're trying.
Carl.
Yes, David.
One last time, I'll finish up. I apologize. I was confused before. It's my fault. That packet came from our after-school Pathfinders program, which is really proving beneficial to many of our students. It was mailed from the intermediate unit, I believe, but it was definitely from the Pathfinders organization. And I want to thank all of them for what they do. Thank you, Carl.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. If there are no more comments at this point, I would accept a motion for adjournment.
Carl, hold on 1 second. Pamela Yost has her hand back up.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it. Yeah. Go ahead, Pamela.
If there was a community member who was very well versed in virtual education, how would that individual become part of the solution on what we could potentially do differently or better to support our students?
Tell them to call me and we'll talk. Let's talk. I mean, we take any help we can get. We appreciate the community support and any expertise within the community. We've had several people reach out to us on various things, and we don't turn a blind eye to that kind of participation if it's beneficial. So there's a number of ways that we could talk about how that could work. So I would encourage that person to call my office, and we will schedule a meeting and go from there.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point in the meeting, I see no other people with their hands raised, so I will again ask for a motion to adjourn.
So move. Yeah, I'll give you 1 second.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for participating. I appreciate the comments today, and we will continue moving forward.